Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Today we're checking out a new dual-mode microphone that recreates both vintage and modern 87 style mics. Let's get started. Over the past 50, 60 or so years, there have been two popular versions of the 87 style microphone. The original, older, more vintage version, which came out during the 60s and of course is very popular, and the more modern version, which has a slightly different sound. And now United has released the UT Twin87 that gives us both those voices in one microphone. But they didn't stop there. They've also included some very popular mods that were done to those original microphones. Let's check this out. Pretty much everything about the UT Twin87 is custom. It's basically been designed from the ground up to again recreate both that vintage and modern style 87. We've got a 6-micron gold sputtered dual diaphragm dual backplate capsule. Frequency response ranges from 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz, and it'll handle up to 137 dB SPL or 147 dB SPL with the pad engaged. Speaking of the pad, of course, that's a 10 dB pad that's switchable from here on the body of the microphone. We've also got a high-pass filter, which cuts us 12 dB at 80 Hz, 3 polar patterns, cardioid, omni, and figure 8. We've got lots of nice details as well, everything from the nickel electroplated brass milled case to the included shock mount, gold-plated XLR connector. One of the important features with this microphone is the custom transformer that's used inside. It actually has 4 times the mass of the transformer that's used in other 87-style microphones, and that contributes greatly to the sound of this microphone. It is, of course, a condenser mic, requires phantom power to operate, but let's get to what's really important here, and that's those two different voicings. We've got vintage and we've got modern. And the thing about this microphone is that there isn't just some filter being applied or a minor change. It's actually completely reconfiguring the circuitry inside. To give you one example, in the vintage 87 microphone, the capsule is actually powered by 48-volt phantom power. When you switch this to the modern mode, it actually jumps to the modern setting, which is 65 volts of power for the capsule. The vintage capsule uses dual backplates, and in the modern setting, we're actually coupling those two backplates together. So all those differences are accounted for when you go from the vintage to the modern setting. It really becomes a different microphone when you move that mode switch. So let's listen to what happens when we switch from modern mode to vintage mode. So far in this video, you've been hearing the UT Twin87 in modern mode. Now I'll switch it to vintage. In vintage mode, the top end drops back a little bit. The mic's a little less present, maybe a little softer sounding, not quite as articulate. We move back to modern, flick of a switch, we get a little brighter sound, a little more open top end, a little bit more presence out of the microphone. Back to vintage again, and you hear the sound warms up, that top end rounds off just a little bit. So this makes this microphone extremely versatile, particularly on voices. If you've got a voice where someone comes in, they have a darker voice, you need a little brighter sound, a little more articulation, put it on the modern setting. If you have someone who has a very bright voice or maybe a lot of sibilance, you could put that over to the vintage mode and roll some of that top end off just a hair, just to warm things up just a little bit. So that makes this mic very versatile. It means the applications are even broader. An 87 style mic, of course, is great on just about everything from acoustic guitar to electric guitar. The great Bruce Swedien used it on toms, on drum sets, and of course it's great on vocals. But with those two settings and the two different modes for the microphone, it makes it even broader in its application. Two other things we should mention with the UT Twin87. There was a popular mod done to many of the original vintage 87s called the True Cardioid mod. What that did is take the cardioid polar pattern basically off the polar pattern selector. It took it outside that circuitry. That gave you a cleaner, hotter, more focused cardioid mode for the microphone, and the True Cardioid mod is included here as well. So again, with that True Cardioid mod, you're bypassing the pattern selector, going directly into cardioid mode, a little bit hotter output, a little bit cleaner, and a little more focused. One other great feature of the UT87 Twin is the RF filter mod. Later 87s feature an RF filter. Now this does change the tone very slightly. So in the UT Twin87, you can actually bypass that RF filter. This gives you a little bit more open sound, a little bit more output, and they used extremely high-end components for that RF filter circuit, so even when it's engaged, it's not coloring the signal as much. You can engage and bypass the RF filter circuit using internal dip switches in the mic. If you've been looking to add the 87 style sound to your mic locker, but you weren't sure whether you wanted a vintage style or more modern style, or you want both, the UT Twin87 is a great solution. It comes in at a great price, but still delivers all the authentic sound of those two different versions of the classic 87. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.